art studio, we're talking about drawing. Basic, look at an object, recreate it on your paper the best that you can. Drawing is a great skill to have. Going through life, it's a good thing to know how to do. It's an additional way to explain or describe something in your mind to somebody else to help them understand. Sometimes words aren't enough. So have that in mind. Even if you think maybe drawing is not for you, it's a good thing to know and understand, even if it's not something that you want to really focus on going forward. That being said, many of you have asked this year for more drawing skills. So this is an opportunity to practice. Draw what you see, not what you know. Means that you have to look at the item you are drawing, because if you don't, you're relying on your memory, and your memory only remembers as much as it has to. So it doesn't remember all the tiny little details in something. So that's where the looking comes in. You have to look at the object. Look at it, look at it, look at it, just as often as you're looking down at the drawing that you're working on. So today, I'm going to ask you to have paper, something to write with, and an object to draw. So for paper, it can be copier paper, any paper is fine. It can be scrap paper and you use the back. It can even be construction paper. This is practice and it doesn't matter what you end up using. And then you need something to write with. It can be a marker, a pen, it can be a pencil. However, in the beginning stages of drawing, please don't erase. If you have a mistake, you just leave it there and just keep on going, so it doesn't interrupt your flow and your focus on what you are doing. Stopping to erase can be really disruptive, especially in the beginning. So no eraser. This has an eraser, but I will not use it. And then a sharpener if you're using a pencil that needs a sharpener, or you can use a mechanical pencil. And to make my point about not erasing, I'm going to use a marker. Okay. So my object today is an apple, because I'm a teacher. And I have a little dish as well that I'll place the apple on. Maybe standing. And the reason I chose a dish is because often when you grab an object, you might end up with something that has these round shapes. Like if you choose a teacup or a bowl of fruit or whatever it may be. When you look at them from the front, you'll see a circle. But as you turn the object away from yourself, in this case I'm turning it away from the viewer, it starts to become an ellipse. An ellipse is a foreshortened circle. So when you're drawing an item that's in front of you somewhere, you're not going to be drawing it like it's a circle, because it's not. You're drawing what you see, which is a low, sort of flat, oval shape. Okay, so I'm going to have my dish, my apple, my paper, and my marker. And for the first step, I'm going to change the camera angle in an attempt to show you how much I look at the apple. And this video is not going to be sped up either. I'm going to do the whole thing in real time because I think it's important for everyone to understand that this sort of stuff takes time. It takes time, it takes practice, and well, like anything else, the more you do it, the better you'll be at it. But even someone who's been drawing their whole life still needs to take their time in order for things to come out well. Okay, first, I'm going to spend a couple of minutes drawing the apple on the plate. Please focus on my eyes and how often I am looking up at the item I'm drawing and how often I'm looking down at my paper. I'll try to make it obvious, but sometimes that's a challenge. All right, so first. You just choose a place to start. Typically, I'll start toward the top of the object. So hopefully that makes sense. Looking at the thing I'm drawing is more important than looking at my work at beginner stages of drawing. Make sure that you're looking up at your object as frequently as you're looking down at your paper. Now I'm going to situate everything a little bit differently. First, I want to talk to you a little bit about perspective. Perspective is different from here, where I'm seeing the apple. So if I were over here or over here, my view would be different. So when you're drawing your object, don't forget that you're the only one that can see it in the exact way that you are seeing it. So I'm going to try to set the camera up in a way that I can do a drawing demo while you can see my paper and what I'm drawing from a similar angle to what I'm seeing, so that you can have an understanding of how I'm working and why, and then try it yourself. So on this apple and dish, as I move around it, my view changes. The lighting changes, the shadows change, the shapes and how they compare to one another change. So set yours up, whatever object or objects you choose, in a way that is pleasing to look at for you. Okay, so I have my apple on my plate, my marker, my paper. To start a drawing like this, and remember, this is practice. I'm not attempting to make this like something I would hang on a wall. This would be work in a sketchbook or on a practice paper like this, with the objective being to learn how to look. So this is an exercise in looking. Please remember that. You're looking at the thing you're drawing and worrying less about what's on the paper. I'm going to begin with the little bit of stem I can see. And my angle is a little bit above the camera angle, so it will look slightly different from what you are seeing, but close. And I use this sort of sketchy way of drawing where I'm making several smaller lines that when they connect together, they create what I want it to look like in total. That's what works for me. You do what works for you. And when I do have an error or something incorrect, I just ignore it and continue so I can stay focused. So I am observing the line that is created where my object meets the space around it, and that's how I end up with the outline. The outline before it has any detail or shading, that is called a contour line drawing. And that's what I start with. right, I feel like that's pretty much the contour line drawing of my apple. Now the plate. Starting with this inner circle here, because I can compare the distance between the edge of the apple and the edge of that, and the sort of crescent shape that it's creating under there. So I'm constantly looking and comparing the distance between one and the other as I sketch it in. And the same with the outer ellipse. And look for how far it appears up the apple. I also notice how I can see the thickness of the plate on this side. I can sketch that in as well. Now using one color, like a pencil or a marker in this case, or a pen, you have to add your shading and details based on how light or dark an area is, because I'm not going to be adding any color to this. If I want to add a detail, that's how I'll add it. So once I feel like I have a decent line drawing, I can go back and add some of the details and some of the shadows. Because right now, it could just as easily be a tomato on a plate as an apple on a plate. So I'm going to attempt now to make it look more like an apple by creating denser, like more densely filled areas of marker to create the redness and darker areas of the apple, as well as the shadows. Like here I see this darker area of red. Up here it's got this great sort of streakiness. So I'm trying to show how up here there's a lighter area of green showing on the apple, transitioning into this medium red, and then the darker red over here. And it looks really dark under here where there's a drop shadow. Mind you, throughout all of this, I am looking up at the apple and the plate still more frequently than I am looking down at the work that I'm, the paper and the work that I'm creating. You also want to take a look at your light source In my circumstance, the light is coming from the window next to me and the apple. So the light is coming from over here, which is creating shadows on this side and highlights more on this side and anywhere else, such as here and the edge of the plate. So you can incorporate that as necessary. So over here is lightest based on the light and based on the color of the apple. And over here is darkest in the same way. I'm using my lines to curve because the apple curves, and that's what it looks like. It looks like it's coming up and around. That will help create the appearance of the apple correctly. It could still be a tomato. I think I did something wrong with this stem here. But like I expect of all of you, I'm just going to fix it the best I can and move on. And then my drop shadows, which are the shadows that happen directly from the light source, kind of create their own line. However, you don't want that line in an instance like this where it is something delicate like sunlight in through a window. You want to have it a little bit gradual. And again, with something like a marker, where I can't really shade or like blend with my finger like I would with a pencil, I can do that by the density of the lines or marks. They don't have to be lines. And so I'm creating the shadow, which then extends across this part of the plate. Again, looking. And then under it on the table as well. Often drop shadows will appear darkest, closest to the object, and then they will fade off into the distance. Now for this exercise, I don't expect to see backgrounds happening, just the object, the shadows, and the details. But in future tutorials, we'll do giving the object placement in terms of what it's on. But in this case, adding the drop shadows really shows that it's on something. Because there has to be something to create that shadow on. All right, everyone. That is our tutorial for today. Remember that the lesson here is about looking, not about how your drawing comes out when it's finished. It's great if you can tell what the object was you were drawing, but if you can't, don't worry about it, because it is honestly about the practice of training yourself to look up at the thing you're drawing more than you're looking at your paper. Remember to take a photo and then upload it to your Google Classroom if you are able to. All right, I will look forward to working with you again in the future. Bye. Have fun.